Welcome back to this part of the episode. Thanks for listening to the Gunpowder, Propane, and Jesus podcast. Let's light it up.
And my drinking really, really ramped up then. I could drink with without any consequences or anybody nagging at me or anything like that. And so we were living up at the lake up at Tradewinds Marina, which is kind of like being on vacation anyway, you know. And so looking back on it, I'm not proud of this by any means, but I look back at pictures of the time that I was raising Chase up there as a single dad, and I could not find one picture of me and my son that I didn't have an alcoholic beverage in my hand. That was just normal, you know? And so this is the point in my life that I decided that something needed to change with my drinking. I never had thought about that part. And so I started doing things like, okay, I'm only going to drink on this day, only going to drink on weekends, you know, and I would do it for a little while and then I'd always revert back to my old ways. And it started bothering me because I'm the type guy that if I set a goal, I'm going to achieve my goal.
Yeah.
And I started realizing that this was the one goal that I would set that I would always ultimately end up failing at. And so that was kind of bothering me right there. Why can't I not do that? And so I think it's important to share at this point in my life too, between my EMS, fire, and law enforcement careers, because I'd done all three at that point, I had a lot of cumulative stress from stuff that we see as first responders, you know, all the death and, you know, things like that. And, you know, you carry it. I mean, Bruce has been in law enforcement and, you know, I mean, I'm sure that there's things that he can clearly pop up right now. And probably there's things that just pop up out of the blue sometimes that you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's the worst part. Yeah, I mean, you know.
Yeah. You can just be sitting in your chair and it's like a box that you've tucked it away deep down in there, all of a sudden opens up and it creeps up right there in the front of you. And so I was dealing with things like that. And the way that if I was dealing with anything like that, the way that I could slow the wheels down turning in my head was drinking.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the stuff from the job. It was the stuff in my personal life too, because I was not proud of the man that I had become. And so when I would think about not being proud of the man I'd become, I'd drink. And so finally I was like, you know what? I need some help and I need some professional help. So I did say, well, you know, I know that I can go to a doctor and, you know, as long as you're not suicidal, that I knew this from law enforcement that, you know, nobody's going to be able to find out about that. And I wasn't suicidal. So I felt safe to go to a doctor, and I went to a doctor. And when he asked me, you know, how much I drank, I lied about it. And I said, well, I rarely drink. I was basically just saying I got all these problems because of being a first responder.
Gotcha.
And so that was the first time I got any type of medication, and the medication worked. It helped me tremendously. However, there was a warning on the side of the bottle that said, do not mix with alcohol. And
so before you go any further, so, and you mentioned before, and it's, you know, the old school thing is, you know, your dad and my dad taught us the same way. You know, if there's a problem, you just eat it and move on.
Right.
You don't, you know, you leave that at home.
Yep.
It's nobody else's business. So to even get to the point where you say, hey, I need help, I need to talk to somebody.
Yep.
That's a huge step. And,
yeah.
And I don't think people realize that, because there's so many different places that'll help you now, and they're great places. But if you've got those people that have been trained that way and brought up that way, hey, you just eat it and move on. That's a hard decision.
Absolutely.
To make.
Yeah, because that's not the way we were raised. Absolutely.
Right.
And so that was a huge, huge step for me to even, you know, step out into that unknown. And so I did it, but I was never honest with the doctor. And so no, you know, I don't blame the doctors or anything, because they were treating what they saw and were being told. But mixing the alcohol on the medicine that they gave me ended up, you know, just the best way I can describe it is making me feel like I was going crazy. And so, I continued that path for a while. And then finally, I was sitting on my couch up there at Trade Winds Marina one night, and Chase was with my mom. Morgan was at his mom's, and I was just like, this is no way to live, man. And I just said that I'd never been suicidal. And I'd always looked at it as somebody that would commit suicide was weak and that they were a coward. It was the easy way out. And now I'm that guy that's sitting on my couch, and suicide is making sense to me.
Yeah.
And that was a hard pill to swallow, because I was like, well, what's crazy about it is it made sense at the time. And I had convinced myself that everybody would be better off without me.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it now, I truly believe that what was happening was I was having a brain attack. You know, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about somebody having a heart attack, you know, and I can say, hey, the electrodes, because everybody knows the heart's got a lot of electricity. And if it starts having misfires, you're going to have a heart attack.
Right.
And if you don't get if you're not truthful with your doctor about what you're doing and what's going on, and you don't get immediate, attention, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Well, the brain has a lot more electricity firing it than your heart does.
Yeah.
And if you're having misfires in your brain, if you don't seek immediate medical attention and are honest with the doctors that are trying to help you, you're going to die. And it may be by your own hand. And that's where I was.
Yeah.
So I went back to my bedroom and got my service weapon out of my holster. And I went back in the living room, and I sat there, and I decided that I was just going to end it. And before I did, though, I wanted to see if I had the courage to actually put a gun in my mouth. I was going to shoot myself in the mouth and do that. And so I took the magazine out of my Glock. I put it on the coffee table and took the round out of the chamber, and I did a dry run, and I had the courage to do it. And it didn't feel uncomfortable to me. And so my plan was to put the magazine back in, chamber around, and shoot myself. But before I did that, I laid my head back, because I wanted to play a tape in my head of all the good times that I had had with my boys before I left this world. And I passed out. And thank God I passed out, because I do believe today that that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Yeah.
Right then. And anyway, when I woke up sometime later, it really rattled me to my core that now I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, not immediately, but after days or weeks, I don't remember the timeline exactly, but it was either days or weeks. I got drunk enough one night that I called Sheriff Clay Whittle, who I was working for at the time, and told him that I needed help. And you want to talk about a big thing, because Bruce. Yeah, now I'm really stepping out there, and I truly believed that when I made that call, it would be the end of my career, but it might save my life.
Yeah.
And so I called him, and he's like, yeah, Bo, we're going to get you help. We're going to get you help.
Yeah.
And I ended up leaving and going to a place in Statesboro, of all places, the drinking town.
Yeah.
And they sent me to a place called Willingway Hospital. And it's fantastic. I spent a month down there. And I was a slow learner. I've always said I was a C student. It was a 28-day program, and it took me 33 days to finish a 28-day program. I'm still trying to figure out how that works. Anyway, the way I look at it is they gave me a toolbox full of tools. I had everything that I possibly needed to come home and live life sober. I had a business plan, a toolbox. I had everything given to me. But I like to do things Patrick's way, and I picked and chose what I was willing to do. I was willing to do this, but I wasn't willing to do that, blah, 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 blah. Well, after about 3 months, I was drunk because I thought, oh, I can just have a couple. And the crazy part about it is the first time I did just have a couple. Yeah. Then the next day I added one. And then 2 weeks later, I'm back to drinking the same way that I always have been. But what changed then was now I'm hiding my drinking for the first time because all of my friends, all of my family's proud of me. I've been off to treatment. They know that I'm sober. I'm supposed to be living a sober life. And now I don't want to disappoint everybody. I'd already disappointed myself, the guilt and the remorse of doing that again. And so I'm hiding it. Well, I ended up deciding, you know what? I don't want to even be at the sheriff's department anymore. I need to go somewhere where nobody knows my history, this, that, and the other. So I decided I was going to move to Savannah and was going to become a cop down there. So I went to Savannah and I had resigned from the sheriff's department and taken a job with First Union Bank and was doing mortgages over there. Anyway, I went to Savannah during this time and had my son with me and was going to look for a job. Well, I found myself down on River Street drinking with my son tagging along with me instead of out looking for jobs. And my mom, who used to call me every day and just check on me because moms know when their child, listen, us dads, we'll miss cues. We'll miss different things, but moms aren't going to miss it. I can remember my mom calling me and I'm having a good day. And she'd say, hey, baby, I just wanted to call and check on you, see how your day was going. And I'd say, it's going good, Mama. I'm having a good day. And she'd say, I can tell in your voice, you know, I'm glad to hear it. And you could tell she was relieved.
Right.
But I could tell my mom I was having a good day when I wasn't. And she'd say, something's wrong, baby. Just tell me what's wrong. Man, moms know.
Yeah.
So I could always count on mom. Well, while I was down there, I realized that mom had quit calling. And it had been days since mom had called. And so that's important. That's an important clue because I've said ever since then, your daddy will give up on you. Your brother and sister will give up on you. Your friends will give up on you. If mama gives up on you,
it's bad.
Yeah. That might be a clue.
Yeah.
And everybody's got a different rock bottom. That was my rock bottom, you know, when mama gave up on me. And anyway, she called and she said, hey, what are you doing? And I told her that I was in Savannah and that she, where's Chase? I said, he's with me. She said, well, let me tell you something. Now she knew that I was drinking again. She said, Chase is no longer going to be on this ride again or anymore. She said, either you get serious about getting sober, you go back to detox, you do whatever you got to do. She said, or I'm coming to get Chase and I'm taking him away. I'm taking him with me. She said, and if I have to go to the court and get emergency, you know, custody, she said, I'll do whatever it takes. And I knew she was serious. And she said, so you have a decision to make. She said, you either go back and get help and get serious about, you know, being sober, or I'm taking Chase. And I got mad and I hung up the phone. How dare she is what I thought, you know? Well, I mixed me a stiff drink in that hotel room and I told Chase I'd be back. And I walked down the hall and told her, and called her back. And I told her, I said, I cannot quit drinking. I said, I cannot live without alcohol. And so I made the decision at that point that I would take alcohol over my own child. And, you know, I think that's important to point out as a career law enforcement officer, how many times I've judged men and women on the street that have chosen drugs over their own child.
Right.
You know, and I've said, how dare you? You know, how are you kidding me? You gave up your child for a crack? Man.
It's a lot easier than you think.
Right. Who am I to judge anybody? Here I am. I gave up my child for Jim Beam.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's where I was. And so my mom said, I'm on the way down there. And she drove from North Augusta down to Savannah, and she called me when she got there, and I had his bag packed, and I met her downstairs. And I'll never forget Chase sitting in the passenger side of that car, and he would have been 12 at the time, and them pulling out of the parking lot and looking back at me. And I could have stopped him at any time and said, whoa, I changed my mind. And I didn't. Yeah. That's the grips that alcohol had on me. And, nobody knew it. Nobody knew it. Everybody, if you saw me, man, I'm such a good actor, man. If you saw me even 5 minutes later, I could flip the script and make you think that everything's great in my life and laugh and cut up with you, and I can fake it. And I went back up in that room and I continued to drink. I later found out, some years later, I was talking to my mom about that, about when they pulled out of the parking lot. And she said, do you know what Chase said to me when we pulled out of the parking lot? I said, no, what? She said, he looked at me and he said, I know I'm going home with you, Mimi, but if I go with you, who's going to take care of my daddy? Man, a 12-year-old. That's what he's thinking, And so I woke up the next morning and I looked in the mirror and I hated who I saw. I said, man, I hate this guy. I was thoroughly disgusted with Patrick Cullinan. And I said, you know what? You're a liar. You're a cheater. You're a thief. And all the things that I had always said that I despised in people, I was all of them. And so I said to myself, you know what? They've given you all the tools. Why don't you try doing everything, even the stuff you don't think applies to you, do everything that they said and do it for 1 year. And if it works out and you get sober and it changes your life, then hallelujah. But if it doesn't work out and you're miserable, then go back to drinking and let it just play out the way it's going to play out.
You're in the same spot you are then anyway.
Right. Because I thought to myself, after a year, if I'm miserable without alcohol, I'd rather be miserable with alcohol than miserable without alcohol. So I called Willingway back and I said, I need to come back up there. And I said, I don't, and I knew I didn't need to stay another month. I just needed to detox. And I said, I need to detox and I need to, get back to getting sober. So when I got there, my original counselor came in and saw me, and he had some really stern things to say. I mean, he told me some things like, you won't ever get sober, Patrick. I was like, why would a counselor tell you that? But that's what I needed to hear.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, why would you say that to me? And he says, because you can't be honest with yourself. He said, we know you can't be honest with other people, but you can't even be honest with yourself. You're BSing yourself. And I said, man, I'll tell you right now, I don't care what you tell me. I'm willing to go to any length. Y'all always said you got to be willing to go to any length for your sobriety. I said, I'm sitting here before you telling you I'm willing to go to any length for my sobriety. He said, okay, well, let's test that. What do you think about going and living in a halfway house with a bunch of convicts and, people out of prison and just all walks of life, living in a halfway house of people in recovery for 6 months? What do you think about that? I said, when do I go?
And that's a whole different thing for a normal person, right?
Yeah.
I'll say normal, but somebody with a law enforcement background.
Yeah.
Because you run into people all over the place. I mean, you work DEA task force raids and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's literally people all over the state and beyond, because people get transferred around and all that stuff. You never know who's going to be in that halfway house.
Never. Absolutely
It
not.
could have been somebody you locked up and ruined their life.
Right, exactly. And that didn't even cross my mind at the time because I was so focused on I am going to give it 100% for 1 year. 1 year. I don't care if they tell me what I got to do. I'm going to do it. And so he told me, he said, I'm going to make a call and I'm going to get you a bed there. He said, if for some reason you don't show up, he said, don't come back here. I said, oh no, I'm going to show up. And I wanted to, man. I want to show him. How dare him say I couldn't get sober. Thank God he told me that. I needed that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, I did, man. I went and, it was in Helen, Georgia. It's called the Hickey House. And, man, I'll never be able to repay them for what they did for me. I'll never forget showing up. And, of course, I wasn't going to tell anybody up there that I was a cop, Right. So I show up and, man, I was in there with crackheads, heroin addicts, meth. Just everything you could think of. Matter of fact, I was like a dinosaur just being an alcoholic, Right. Most guys up there were cross addicted to drugs and alcohol. But this is where it's important for me to share that I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart when I say this. Nobody loves a recovering drug addict or alcoholic more than me, because that's who saved my life. Because of those men at the Hickey House is why I'm sitting here talking to y'all today.
Yeah.
That's where so much of the puzzle came together. One of the guys named Linwood asked me when I first got there, he said, cause I was talking about going to any length for my sobriety. He said, how often do you pray, Patrick? And I said, well, I told myself, I said, okay, I'm going to go to any length. I'm going to be honest. And I said, I don't. And he said, why not? And I said, well, I don't feel comfortable praying to God because I have disappeared on God for so many years. Who am I to come back now and say, oh, help me now, God, help me now? I said, so I just don't do it. He said, okay, that's cool. I understand. He said, but you said you're willing to go to any length for your sobriety. Would you be willing to pray to my God? I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. He said, keep it simple. Every morning, I want you to get down on your knees on the side of your bed. And don't ever pray on the side of a messed up bed. You pray on the side of a made up bed. He said, I want you to ask my God to help keep you sober today. Just that simple. And he said, if you make it back to bed to get in bed, he said, I want you to thank my God. And so I did that. And I couldn't say, I was not comfortable with saying, God, please help keep me sober today. But I was comfortable with saying, Linwood's God, please help keep me sober today. And that's what I said. It takes what it takes,
Right.
And a few days later, maybe a week later, he came to me and he said, hey, you still been praying to my God? And I said, yeah, but if I'm being honest with you, I missed a couple days here or there, I got in a hurry, yada, yada, yada. And I said, and I just didn't pray because you told me to pray on my knees. And I felt like I wasn't giving right prayers if I wasn't on my knees. So I just ended up missing. And he said, where do you keep your keys? And I said, on my bedside table. And he said, from now on, I want you to keep them under the middle of the bed. He said, because when you get up in the morning and you go to leave the house, because we all had jobs there too, and I worked on a farm. He said, you got to get your keys. So you're going to be on your knees on the side of the bed.
Already there.
And then if you store your keys there at night, you're going to be back down there again. Best thing Linwood ever told me. It got me on my knees twice a day. And so sometime later, at some point it just dropped off and I quit saying Linwood's God and I said God.
Yeah.
And I realized that Linwood and I had the same God.
Yeah.
And I told Linwood that. I said, man, I think you and I got the same God. He said, man, it took you a long time to figure it out. But Linwood brought me back to my relationship with God. And, one of the things that they told me, and I learned this in, my 12-step recovery was 3 things that I have to do to stay sober is trust God, clean house, Yeah. Keep my side of the street clean.
Yep.
Clean out those skeletons in my closet. And number 3, help others.
Mm.
And they said, if I continue to do those 3 things, trust God, clean house, and help others every day, I can continue staying sober. And Tom Hickey, who owned the Hickey house, I remember him telling me one day, he said, Patrick, I don't care if you leave here and you live on the Las Vegas Strip for the rest of your life. If you do those 3 things, you can stay sober anywhere with alcohol around you and everything.
Yeah.
He said, but your desire to stay sober, it's like a seesaw. Your desire to stay sober has to stay, stronger than your desire to drink. And so, anyway, I completed my 6 months there. It was fantastic. One of the best experiences. Now, don't get me wrong. There was some bad times. There were some times I wanted to leave. There were some times I wanted to choke some people out. Living with a bunch of dudes, regardless if they're in recovery or not, man,
It's
just like if all of us had to live together, we'd be at each other's throat eventually, especially like John, if I woke up and you hadn't made grits, it's on, man.
You'd be mad, huh?
I'd be mad.
You missed them this morning. They were on point.
Oh man. God, I know they were, but you know what? I probably wouldn't have eat much since I'm on that Morgiorno or whatever. I'm not on that, by the way. Nothing wrong if you want to be on it, but I'm not on it. And the reason I'm not on it, because I hear that it cuts back on your appetite.
It does. I'm on it. Yeah.
It
helps out quite a bit. Yeah.
Oh, see, I don't want to cut back on my appetite.
I like my appetite.
Man, I quit drinking and I quit smoking. All I got
is eating.
What's terrible is when you like, I know that I need to take my shot because my stomach starts hurting. And if I don't take it after, like when that happens, if I wait a day or 2, I just cram everything I can in. Like there's no, like I can just eat and eat.
Like every day's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, pretty much. Even worse than that. I will just sit there and devour. Like it's weird. It's crazy. But one thing I love about your recovery story is a lot of people look at recovery and they're like, these people are at the bottom of the barrel. Their parents beat them. They slept in cars, they slept in ditches, all kinds of crazy stuff, and it sounds like you had a great childhood. And it wasn't like, I don't know how to explain it, but God didn't drag you through the gutter, you know what I mean? And you were still, you knew where you were, you knew where you needed to be, and you knew what you needed to do to get your life back on track. And it just, I like those kinds of stories because everybody has that, almost, I don't know what I'm saying, but I don't know. It was just nice to hear, you knew what was going on and how to get to the bottom of it. You know what I mean? And I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And
you hear the worst of things, but it's nice to hear a recovery story that wasn't the worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it could have been worse, and it still can be, and that's the thing about it that I have to realize, my sobriety date is, July 22nd, 2003.
Yeah.
And,
I think what I was saying is, because there are people out there that were just like you that don't think it's an issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
and someone will hear that and be like, wow, this guy didn't have it that bad. Maybe I have an issue.
Right.
You know what
I
I mean?
That's right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I get it.
People look at the rock bottom stuff and they're like, I'll never be in that position. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like me. I remember being in living in the halfway house when I first got there and having a group, meeting and saying, well, I've never been arrested. And one of the guys looked across the room and he said, yet.
Yeah.
And he's right. I haven't been arrested yet.
Yeah.
Because if I do those things, it will come, know? And so, looking back, I didn't lose what a lot of people lose as far as, losing, houses and careers and this, that, and the other. What I did lose was I lost Patrick. I lost Patrick 100%. And that was, when I was getting sober, John, one of the things that I used to lay there, my head on the pillow at night, and I'd say, I just want peace within. my insides for so many years had felt like, imagine this, you got a towel, you put it in the bucket of water and you want to wring it out and you want to get every drop of water out. So you start wringing it. Think about how tight you're wringing that towel.
Yeah.
As tight as that towel is when you're getting that last drop out, that's how my insides felt every day.
Mm-hmm.
And today, sitting here with y'all right now, my towel would just be like just a towel hanging there.
Yeah.
Now that can switch just like that.
Quick.
I could leave here and something happen in life and my towel tightens up.
Thanks for listening, and remember, the smoke may settle, but the embers stay lit. This was the Gunpowder, Propane, and Jesus podcast. Stay tuned for the next part of this episode.